Good morning, class. My name is Oliver Wieheog. I am a 27-year veteran of the middle school classroom, and you are listening to episode 17 of Middle School Madness, a podcast about teaching and things that are interesting to teachers. If you would like to send in a question or a comment, you can send them to wieheog@gmail.com. Now, we've just turned into 2025, and so over the holidays, I went to lots of gatherings, and people would always ask me about teaching, and I found myself talking about how hard it can be, how challenging teaching can be, especially how it can be a really challenging to be a career teacher. And I found myself talking to college students about to enter the profession, and every time I got to the end of the conversation, I always finished with how I end these podcasts, and the world needs a good teacher, but I would have a huge smile on my face. So as we turn that calendar to 2025, I thought to myself, should you become a teacher in 2025? So to help me ponder this very complicated question, right, I have asked Joe Koromas, a soon-to-be retired middle school civics teacher, to join me today. Joe, how you doing, and welcome to the show.
Well, hello there. Wow, 27 years. Really?
I started in 1997.
Wow. Well, I was wondering how long we've known each other. That is interesting that it's been that long. Wow.
Yeah.
I find it, well, let me put it this way. Every year is a new year to me, and every year is a new start, and every year is different because it's all different students. And I find that I never do anything twice in class. Let me explain that. Okay. I teach the same thing, but every year I do a different lesson. I'll do all different lessons. I'll do maybe one lesson or two lessons the same, but I may change it up. All the tests I write new. I never use a test that I've used before ever, twice in 31 years. Because it's what I'm talking about in class that's important. And I let the students know that if you're a good teacher, you always let them know. You kind of clue them into what the questions you're going to ask them. Anyways, getting back to this.
Well, let's go all the way back to the beginning, right? This is what I really want to know. Like, we got to go back before we even answer the question, right? Because clearly you and I are going to be career teachers. But let's go back in the Wayback Machine, right? And just tell us, what was your journey to becoming a teacher?
All right. Mine started in actually junior high school, which is where we're at right now. Mm-hmm. In 7th, 8th, 9th grade was my junior high. And in my junior high homeroom teacher and my English teacher was Mrs. Leonardo. And up to that point, I grew up with a rough family. I grew up in a steel mill town, and my dad was a steel worker, and he was getting laid off all the time. So it was a difficult upbringing. But Mrs. Leonardo showed me passion, showed me that she had, saw me as a person, and she saw me that I had worth and value. And that changed my life. She made me think that I could do something, that I could move forward. And I thought, you know what? I want to be like her. And the other teacher was Mr. Zana, which was a chorus teacher, guitar teacher. He was just a wonderful man. But him also. He knew every student. He knew something about every student. When he saw you, he could talk to you individually, knowing you. And that always was in the back of my mind. And that's why I wanted to be a teacher. And, growing up, my family wasn't an educated family, so I didn't know any other careers to go into in college other than that. I thought about being a priest, but then I hit 9th grade and I started liking girls. So that was kind of out of here when that happened.
And in regards to the two teachers that just helped push you in that direction, in their class, was this a class you excelled at? Like, were you really?
I'm terrible at English.
Okay.
That's why I'm a history teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
But somehow, even though you weren't like the best of the best, just the way that they treated you.
Right. Yes, but amazingly today, I don't know if no, Mrs. Leonard would still be there because of the way she treated you as an individual.
Yes.
She would tell me, Joe, take your elbows off the desk. Make sure you put your arms on the sides and sit up. Don't slouch in your chair. But she was very nice about it. She never raised her voice. She would always look you in the eye. She was always compassionate. Changed my life.
So then how did you get hired here at Seneca Valley? What brought you here?
Okay, that's a long story. If you are going to be a teacher, you have to go in it to teach. And what I mean by it is you have to love to be in the you have to love. I think you have to love acting a little bit. I think it helps.
Oh, it does.
I think by putting on a show, but also letting the kids know that you're human too. That helps a lot. Just being yourself. Don't try to be something you're not. It won't nuke. It won't work. The students will see right through it. So just be yourself. But anyway, so I graduated from college and I started subbing at Ambridge.
Okay.
Where I went to school. And I subbed there for a few years, but I found that my first degree wasn't any good. I had a history minor, went back to college, graduated again with my history degree, social studies, secondary. And I also was coaching wrestling at Freedom. I was coaching track and field at Ambridge. Any way I could find avenues to get into the field because you need to get all those feelers out there. That's the best way to do it. Sub everywhere you can. Don't just sub in one district. So what came around is I was coaching track and field, and the head coach of the track and field team had to be, her name was Irv Weisscheidel, Dr. Weisscheidel. And he went into administration, and I took his position in Earth and Space Science, and I taught for him for a year. Well, this Earth and Space Science was not a upper level science course. It was a science course so that you could graduate.
Got it.
But I'll leave it there.
Okay.
So anyways, him and I had coached for years, and he was hired here at Seneca Valley. And there were openings here, and I applied, and I got the interviews, and I got hired. But it was weird because I was also full-time subbing at Ambridge, teaching social studies at the time. And the day that I got the call to work here, the next day Ambridge called me with a position to teach there. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting that, keeping my feelers, keeping my eyes, and keeping my hands in all kinds of places helped.
Yes.
So it's what you know. It's also who you know. And it does help. Academics are great, but you have to do more than you have to show them that you really want to teach.
Because Irv became the principal here, right? Yeah. And so he was the principal that hired you?
Yes.
That is amazing.
And then I was still coaching at Ambridge track and field. So I would leave early, well, not early, but before the buses to coach track and field there. Then they hired me to coach track and field here.
Got it.
So I started coaching pole vaulting here. And my kids really got good at it. But then I had a son, and c'est la vie, that coaching career was over.
So knowing that most teachers will teach between 5 and 15 years is the lifespan of a teacher, right? You're a career teacher.
Why only 5 to 15?
Well, it's a very demanding,
yes, it is.
thing. And I think in all of our careers, right? Like if I was to reflect back on mine, and we're going to get you to reflect back on yours.
All right.
You've taught for 5 or 10 years, right? Why did you stay? Why not leave? Sometimes you hear people, they have a good reason to leave, but why stick with teaching after a decade's worth?
It was never work. I can honestly say it's never been work. I've had jobs. I've done waitering and cooking and sewage treatment and you name it. I've done jobs, but this has never been a job. This is what I do. It's the best way to explain it. I don't ever. when I see a new year when I start, oh my gosh, it's brand new. It's like Christmas every. I mean, I can't. That's the best way I can explain it. I never am like, oh man, I got to do this, or I have to make a lesson, or I got to do that. No, it's just you do it because you need to do it. It's never worked to me, I guess. I'm always just trying.
Do you stay because, like you said, the subject matter is the subject matter? But
Right.
do you stay because you enjoy the people on your team, do you think? Did you stay because,
Everything. I mean, I love my team.
yeah.
My team of teachers. We're the Eagles, okay? But we've always said that we are the Ducks. And why do we say we're Ducks? Is because, things may happen, but like ducks, water just rolls off our backs.
Okay.
So we're like a family. You may have quarrels, you may have misunderstandings, but we all overcome them because we're a family, and we know that. We give and take. When somebody needs help, we help. I love this teaming. I've been doing it, like I said, now for 31 years, and it is the best system I can ever think of to really get to know students. And here's the big thing: you may have problems with a student,
Right.
and you think, oh my God, it's me and the student. There's something. I'm approaching them wrong, or somehow I can't get through to this student to I don't want to say get to like me, but to be cordial. And then you go to the team meeting, and the other one teacher's talking about the same student and the other student. And then you find out, oh my gosh, something's going on in this student's life. And that's where you can help them. And I think that's what makes teaming so great, because then you can go to guidance and say, hey, we're seeing these things with this student, and hopefully we can get that student some help. And maybe something at home, maybe friends, maybe something at school, but we can see that students need help, and that's what we're here for. We're here to teach, we're here to help. That's our jobs. I mean, why do doctors do what they do? Why do nurses do what they do? They love their jobs. And I have a family of nurses and
Right.
and all my in-laws, and they love their jobs, but it can be stressful at times. But they want to do for the other person. You don't think of. I guess you don't think about. I never think about the money. I have never thought about. Oh, I'm making $25 this hour. I'm making $10 this hour. Now, when I was working at Kmart, I was doing that. I was saying, I'm making $3.85 for this hour. Okay, I'm here for 4 hours, so I'm going to make this much money. And I'm always looking at the clock. I don't do that here. Never.
So
have.
then what would then be the difference between working that Kmart job and being a teacher? That where when you're here, the money and the time seems to go by, but where you're working, say, like the hourly job, it feels like an hourly job.
Yes,
What's
the time just
what's that
drags.
difference?
It's a job. Oh man, it's the same thing over and over again. Every year it's new students. You get new personalities, new characters.
You do.
New families. So it's all new, and it's really interesting to get to know new students, especially students who may be from a different country or different background of either religious or ethnic. I mean, it's fascinating to learn. Always.
Like you had mentioned in ninth grade, you were thinking about becoming a priest.
Yes.
A lot of people will use the phrase, going into ministry is a calling. God,
Right.
God called me to be here. Is it similar for teaching? Because sometimes you hear people say teaching is a calling. I was just called to be a teacher. I was called to be in the classroom.
I think, in a sense, yes. Because when I did my student teaching, I can remember a lot of my students. I remember exactly. I can still remember teaching that and getting into the classroom was exciting. Getting in front of the students and imparting knowledge, but it was just, I took acting classes in college, and I loved acting too. So getting in front of a class to me is fun. It's fun.
It's the best.
I think it's just, you know, if you can make them laugh, if you can keep them engaged, wow, that's just something.
So then, as the decades go on, right? Like you know, we're going to say you started in 1987 because that's going to correspond to the trivia you're going to play at the end. What changes did you notice in the classroom? Like I said, as 1 year became 5 years, became.
You know, everybody says that over time, oh, kids have gotten worse, and you know, I really haven't seen that. It depends on I would have to say the school district, where you teach, kind of does play a part in your ability to teach. We are lucky to be in Seneca Valley, I believe, because of the mix of students that we have, but they're still teachable. The best, I think, word I could use at this point. I can't think of a better one. And you don't have to worry about them just already turned off from learning.
In many ways, I would say that's the joy of middle school, right?
Yeah,
they
it
still
is.
have a little bright-eyed, bushy tail.
Yes.
You know?
You still have a sense of hey, I could, you know, I think one of the best was I had a student who said I said, what's your goal in life? And he said, play in the NFL. I said, really? I said, so what position do you play on the football team in 8th grade? Oh, I'm not on the football team in 8th grade. I said, okay, I just,
right.
You know, it's the wonderment of
I can still do it, even though I don't play football.
I don't play football.
I'm making
at
it to the
NFL. I thought that was quite. You know, I was waiting for. Hey, I play quarterback.
Right.
I'm the star linebacker.
Nothing.
No, I don't even play football.
No.
But
that is so middle school. I was thinking about like 30 years, but Lacey, in the last 10, it dawned on me we've seen a tremendous amount of change
the
in
technology.
our classroom. We saw the invention of cell phones, which
Yes.
of course brought out social media.
Yes. Oh.
We have then gone through a pandemic.
Yes.
And then
that was. Oh.
right. Then you're a teacher of civics, so we've also gone through this huge upheaval of politics,
Which was tough.
is the subject that you
taught.
teach.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how has all of this really changed the way you interact with your students or the atmosphere inside of your classroom?
The politics have changed where you have to make sure you know your facts. Stories come out. You have to look at them from your sources and make sure that you are looking at middle of the road sources. But you still need to look at the right and the left, because if you're not informed of your side, they can come and they can smack you. I've had students that have come in with T-shirts on with their political views on, which they can do. Mm-hmm. That's their right, as long as it's not saying that they're going to harm the other candidate in some way.
Correct.
That's fine. But do they really understand, I think, the actual facts? Do the parents actually understand the facts? That's my thing, because most people today don't really get the facts. They watch one news source.
Right.
They listen to one certain type of social media, and they think they know what's going on, but they don't. They don't.
Has it been harder? Like, I think of the 80s. We still had 3 networks, ABC.
Right, yeah.
One could tell you who all 3 anchors were.
Yeah, Walter Cronkite was the man.
Yeah, I remember Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather, Ted Koppel.
Yes.
And I think I'm missing the guy. I said Dan Rather, but But you had very simple news sources. Now
Yes.
you can click on a link to an article that's not actual news. That could
Yes.
you don't know where it came from. You know what the slant is.
Yes, I've actually had students that have brought in articles from The Onion. Now, everybody knows what The Onion is. Yeah.
Total satire.
And if you don't, then you need to do some research.
Does that make the classroom environment for civics more hostile?
Not if you steer it correctly. If you keep it down in the middle of the road and you give both sides their due. In other words, I try to explain what the Republican Party stands for, what the Democratic Party stands for, what their platform, their planks are, and leave it at that. It's up to them to decide. I don't try to push one side over another, and I do not get into the squabbles between them.
Right.
And you know, as we get to the point where, you know, I woke up and read the news or saw the news this morning how the law for TikTok being banned was upheld by the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court doesn't uphold the laws. That is the job of the executive branch. Our current president, Biden, has decided not to enforce the law, which means he's going to leave it up to the next president, President Trump, to decide what he wants, if he wants to enforce it or not. And what I am hearing is that President Trump does not want to enforce the law. So we may see a little one branch against another. We're going to see the executive branch against the judicial branch. We'll see if the legislative branch gets involved at all, which they can always do. But I'm not sure exactly what the path is going to take. If he doesn't uphold the law, there is precedence in the past in which presidents have said, no, I'm not upholding the law. Supreme Court, do what you can to stop me from stopping it. And there's nothing they can do.
So then inside my head, right, I picture your classroom. Are you, and I guess I know we have whiteboards. It's funny, in my head, I picture like an actual big whiteboard, not the smartboards. Do you draw 3 circles? Like, how do you make the kids visualize, like, because this is a real life, in the moment, they're all on TikTok. How do you convey this point in class? Because I think
what I usually do is, you know, your Venn diagram. All right.
Right, the old Venn diagram.
Venn diagram. We have what each side is, but I have them. I used to, and I don't do this anymore because we did switch over this year to U.S. history. But anyways, when I did cover it, I tried to show them basically what each side is standing for and what each side is doing with, say, a law is going to be passed.
Yes.
I would show them the votes. I would let them decide, okay, here's where the Republicans stood. And you can always see if it's a one-sided vote, if it's all the Republicans on one side, all the Democrats on the other. And it's getting tiring to the point where our political parties have sided and they cannot see the middle. And the whole realm of politics is being able to compromise. That is what politics is supposed to be about, is compromise to meet for the people. And I think we've lost that. The right's going right, the left's going left, and they are not meeting in the middle.
All right.
It's happened.
So speaking of things that are getting harder, right? That's harder
Right.
to compromise. What was the hardest day or year where you struggled to be a teacher? Where it was like just to get out of your car, to walk in the front door.
Well, I think there was an administration that was here, and they were trying a type of style of teaching. I don't want to get into specifics, that I just could not. I don't want to say understand.
Mm-hmm.
I could not agree with, and I guess I was bucking the system. And doing it my way. Well, I kind of dreaded doing that. I would throw it in every once in a while,
Right.
But it didn't work. Let's put it that way. And it was supposedly going to be here forever, And you remember how that goes.
Yeah.
You know, about every so many years, this is going to be here forever. It's not going to change. And then
Right.
5 years later, what was that again? What was it called?
Write your objective
yeah.
on the board.
Yeah, and make sure that you have
An objective on the board.
Yeah, and so I've seen so many come and pass. Somebody, and it comes either from the state. The state said, when I first started, it was called Outcomes-Based Education,
Yes.
OBE.
Oh,
right?
gosh,
Now, the
OBE.
state didn't really know what that was. So they said it to the school, and the schools were supposed to apply it, come up with it, do it. But there was no real guidelines. So it was up to the individual districts to do it. And then they would send it to the state, and the state then was supposed to like go, oh, okay, we'll pick this one. This is what OBE is.
Yes.
Well, it just fell through.
Yeah.
So that went by the wayside. That was a statewide. But then you get district-wide mandates. And then we went through a phase of teaching the test. Making sure that our scores look good because we have to compare it to other school districts, and it has to look good in the Business Times. And people want to move into a school district that has good ratings. So we went through that period. And then we went through, what was that? I kind of forgot. COVID?
COVID was a
COVID.
challenge because, we tried a lot of different ways for learning here in COVID. And that, I remember that jacked up my anxiety. Are we here? Are we online? We did the one scenario, remember, where I want to say like A through M showed up on certain days.
Yes.
N through Z showed up on the other days. It was just a constant flow. And that made it a challenge.
And then we went full-blown teaching from home. And that,
Yes.
And
I
that-
remember driving to work one day and
And-
getting a phone call that said, turn around,
go home.
go to your basement, start teaching, which is
That's
where I
right.
had my studio.
Yeah. And we did that for, how long did we do that? Was that half a year, a year?
I mean, that was the December of 2020, maybe into January, and then we came back with masks and
Matt, oh yeah. And
That
that's
was
the
a
year
challenge.
nobody knew what their students looked like.
no,
It was like
No.
you knew their eyeballs. That was about it.
that was about it. Well, thus, if you can see the poster behind you,
yeah.
right, we have
yeah.
the many expressions of Mr. Weir.
And then I saw the yearbook the next year. I'm like, oh, is that what they look like?
That's what they look
It was
like.
oh my.
So on the other side of this, is there a year that you remember being, that was the year I was an all-star? Everything worked. The kids were great, that your team was great. No matter what you taught, you're like, that lesson, I crushed it.
You know what? Every year. I think that that's the thing. You never give up. You always try to be better than you were. You always learn from your past. I'm teaching about how they made the Constitution and on the Articles of Confederation and all the mistakes they made. So they came back and they made it better. They did something different. They said, well, we had no way to apply the law, so we made an executive branch. So what it's what I try to always do is try to do better. Try to get to make it more, appealing to students. With this age of all the quick turnaround with all the different social media platforms that 15 minutes, the old 15 minutes of fame now is 15 seconds.
Oh, yes.
What was his name? I can't even remember now. Andy Warhol.
Andy Warhol.
15 minutes, Mr. Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh native.
I had his great nephew in class, actually.
That is cool.
Warhol, yes. And so the 15 minutes is down to 15 seconds. That's about a time about if you plan on lecturing a classroom,
Oh, my.
you will be amazed at how fast that you will just see eyeballs roll back in the head and just drool come out of the mouth.
Yeah.
Because don't do it. I'm just telling you that much right now.
Well, this is great. So then to be a teacher, because we're still trying to decide whether we should be a teacher in 2025, what are your top three qualities to make it through to be a career teacher?
Wow. Okay. When you student teach and you get in front of that classroom, you will get a feeling you'll get a rush. You should, at least. Not of anxiety, not of dread, but of, wow, I'm here.
I like that.
And you start going. And even if you falter, even if, like I remember I had a fact, I had the mistake of where the follicle was on the leaf. It wasn't on the top side; it's on the bottom side of the leaf, where the oxygen is. Anyways, yes, but the excitement of getting in front of the classroom is, I don't know, it's an adrenaline rush, I guess you could say.
All right, so there's one. Give me two more qualities that you need to be a career teacher.
You have to always love learning something, because it always changes. Believe me, we've gone through so many. You look at technology.
Oh my!
I know. I started. We were doing films. We were doing 16 millimeters,
Right.
and then we had the carts with the VCRs. And man, to get a TV with a cart with a VCR, and man, you looked all around the building. You stole them from other people.
You had to sign it out.
Yeah, you had to sign it out.
Sign it out.
A VCR. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that those days. That was high tech. That was high tech. And then we got the Apple standalone computers, and we first got the internet, and we started playing around with that.
Crazy times.
Ooh.
All right, so you need one more. You gotta
Keep up with the times.
Keep up with the times.
Love doing it.
Love
changing. You can't be static. Forget it.
Right.
You have to want to change, and I think, I mean, you have to love it. But I mean, that's quality. I think you have to go into it. You can't go into it thinking you got to make a ton of money.
Right.
Don't go in for the money at all. Don't. You'll burn out before you know it. And I've seen teachers that come in, and this was weird. This was just last week. I ran into a teacher that teaches here that's been in here for only maybe 12 years that dreads coming here every day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you should be out. Get out while you can. And here's one thing. If you plan on teaching, and don't plan on moving district to district, because here's what's going to happen. Once you start working on steps, working up the pay scale.
Yep.
If you move to another district, they're going to start you all the way down at the bottom.
Back down to one.
And that means you got to go back to making less money. So plan on staying at the school you're teaching at. I'm telling you, you got to love where you're at. And that can be difficult. So before you get too far into your career, try to change if you still want to teach, but if you don't like where you're at, change. Look for a change to find a place that suits you.
So that sounds like that is something that you would say to someone who wants to become a teacher.
Yes.
What else would you tell them? What would you say? Like I said, I found myself over the holidays talking to young people.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person who's like, hey, I'm in my third year of college thinking of becoming a teacher?
Well, one thing is, I can tell you, get in a classroom. I remember, when I went to college, you didn't get into the classroom until you did your student teaching.
Yeah.
And that was after 4 years of education.
Right.
And all of a sudden you get into the classroom and you don't like it. Now what do? And I've seen it happen. When I was at Ambridge, I was in full time. The kid next door to us was teaching health, and he was hired for the year. And he just got up and left one day and wasn't there anymore.
He just didn't come back?
He just didn't come back because he didn't like it. I'm like, wow, you better be sure you want to do this.
Yeah.
This is not something you do because it's easy. It's not.
I've always thought to teach, you need to teach from within.
Yes.
Like it's just like I just can't.
Yes.
I can't fake being a teacher.
Yes, you're right.
And then just for fun, my very first day of student teaching, right? I go, like all student teachers, I had planned more because I was on a block schedule.
Yes.
So I had 90 minutes to fill.
So was I.
And I, had overplanned. I'm like sweating. You don't sleep the night before. Like you said, there is so much staying anxiety. I go to the classroom. There's a note on the door. Oliver, meet me in the library. Like, well, this is now I'm like really like, I go to the library. The whole faculty is there. The chief of police is there. And he's like, guys, we're going to bring the dogs in. We're going to lock your classroom down. Right? If you hear barking in the hallway.
Yeah.
And instantly I'm like, I don't think I have 90 minutes of material. And my mentor teacher comes over to me. She's like, Oliver, I want you to stand by the window when they lock us in there. And I remember looking at her, and And clearly, like the young, pudgy-faced Oliver's like, why would I stand? I go, why do you want me to stand by the window? She
Yeah,
goes,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
in case they throw anything out. Which at this moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, she really thinks that people are going to be holding drugs and might just be like, whoop, out the window.
That sounds like a wonderful situation.
So they lock the door, they bring the dogs in, there's all this barking. And I think to your credit, I look back 28 years later, I was just so entertained. This is how I started my career, and I came back the next day.
Well, I it kind of happened to me because when I was student teaching, I did my first degree is in environmental science. So I taught at the high school in the morning, Blackhawk High School in the morning. I taught 12th grade advanced placement biology, and then I taught a lesson of environmental science. And then I had to get in a car and drive to the middle school. And this was a 5, 6, 7 middle school.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon, I taught 3 classes of 5th grade science. And this was every day for 15 weeks.
Wow.
Well, I get into the second week of my student teaching, and my co-op teacher was in a car accident and was in a hospital for the rest of the time. So I was sitting with a substitute teacher just teaching the class in the afternoon.
So in the rule of improv, I will accept your offer of yes, that is true. And not sooner had I taught my first class, my mentor teacher was, I don't remember how long pregnancy lasted. She was at the end of her pregnancy.
Right.
And so she left. And they had a substitute in the room, and the substitute kept undercutting my authority. So I had to call my mentor teacher, who clearly had just had a baby. I want to say her husband was the assistant principal. And I said, you've got to get this woman out of the classroom. I open my mouth, she says something different.
Yeah.
And she's like, Oliver, I just had a baby, but I'll see what I can do, knowing who her husband was. And sure enough, the next day, I'm up there, shirt on, tie on, doing my best. And there's a knock at the door, and there's the woman's husband. And he does the hand gesture to the substitute teacher, and she never came back. Okay, so let's get to the question, Joe. Should you become a teacher in 2025? That is Joe, that's a long pause.
It's kind of like a loaded question. Because going into it, I would say, for me, I would still be a teacher. It's what I always wanted to do, and once I started it, I loved it. Going through all the changes I've gone through and all the different schools, and I still love it. I still enjoy every day. Yeah, you have a kid here and there that's not fully, I don't know, likable, but I can't think of anything else to do. I honestly, if you have to know you want to do this, I don't think it's something you do because it's easy or it's not the thing. They say those who can do and those who can't teach. No, I'm sorry.
Never like that.
That's not true. I remember just last fall talking to the regional coordinator for one of the political campaigns for the presidency, and they wanted me to come aboard to help out them in the region. And I started talking about the economics of the situation, and she had no idea what I was talking about. I said, wait a minute, you're the regional campaign director, and you don't know anything about economics. I said, I questioned in my mind whether, what else could I have done with my mind? I don't know.
Yeah.
But knowing that I love acting and I love learning, there you go.
You got a job for a lifetime, right? That's
great. It.
So, all right, Joe, it is now time to play everyone's favorite trivia game. Right? Cue the music. 5 for 5. This is trivia from the 1980s. All these questions
80s
that I am going to ask you are all about the year 1987.
1987.
Which was the year you said that you started
That's
teaching.
when I graduated in the spring, and I started. Actually, the day after I graduated, I started subbing.
Good. Well, I think, we're going to find out how smart You really are. Of course, that's sarcasm. Okay. This will be an easy one because you taught
Sure.
civics. Who was the president in 1987?
1980.
Oh, my
Okay,
gosh.
I honestly have to think.
Would you like me to ask the follow-up question for a clue?
Yes.
Can you name a movie he starred in?
Oh, well, Bonzo, bedtime for Bonzo.
Bedtime for Bonzo. And the president in 1987 was?
Ronnie Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. Okay, here you go. Question number 2 and 5 for 5. Who was the Speaker of the House? You see, I went with civics questions
Oh,
here.
man. You're talking Tip O'Neill?
Tip O'Neill. Follow-up question. What was his real first name?
Ooh.
I see. Why do I got a feeling you went?
You're going deep here.
I had to do it, man.
And
5
this
for
Tip,
5.
but,
This is like bad 80s talk radio.
Oh, my gosh. Tip O'Neill. What was his real name?
I'm going to play a
Tipper?
clock. Close. Thomas Phillip.
Thomas Phillips.
Thomas Phillip. Okay. Thomas Phillip. All right.
Okay.
All right. It is 1983. The Best Picture award went to what movie?
83.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 1987.
87.
87. Right. I will give you a clue.
It wasn't Rambo. I know that much. But,
Well,
but Rambo
one-
did come out.
You are close in genre. The first name of the director is Oliver.
Oh, it has to be Born in. No. I can't think of the name. I love the movie too.
I remember
right?
seeing
Remember
the movie.
the
The movie poster. I'm now doing my William Dafoe.
I tell you what, the soundtrack was just fabulous too.
Right, and the blood packets didn't go off as he ran through the rice paddies. The name of that movie is Platoon.
Platoon, yes.
See, you knew
I-
it. I just had to say it for you.
I love that film. That
All
was that's one of my. I'm a really war history. I love war history. So
Number 4. All right, we're going to go to sports history here in Pittsburgh.
It wasn't the Pirates.
No, we're going football because
Okay.
that's kind of what Pittsburgh's known for.
Yeah.
Who was the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1987?
Ooh, was that transition to Cowher or was it still? Oh my gosh!
Come on, man.
I'm gonna say Cowher.
Oh, unfortunately, that is incorrect.
It was still the original. Well,
It was
the
Chuck
original.
Noll.
Chuck Noll.
Okay,
Chucky.
so
yeah, because that's about when he was at the point when they really stunk.
that's funny because my second follow-up question was, do you know their record in 1987?
I would say 6-10 or 6-10.
I think that was the record the year before. They were 8-7. They had actually
8-7. They
Yes.
actually wow.
Now, I did not know this till about an hour ago, but I had to look it up. Who was their quarterback in 1987?
Mark Malone.
Oh my God! How do you get that right? How did you say that with no, dude?
Okay, here's why.
Okay.
I graduated college, and at the time, I was actually also working at Kmart as a stock boy.
Yeah.
And so somebody came in to buy a grill, and it happened to be
Mark Malone.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember.
Wow. Okay. And final question in 5 for 5. What was the number 1 TV show in 1987?
87. Cheers? No.
Not Cheers. Not Cheers. Ready? I will give you a clue. Jell-O pudding.
The Cosby Show.
The Cosby Show. Good.
Do you remember Picture Pages?
I don't.
Yeah, Cosby did this little thing. It was like 3 minutes. It was called Picture Pages.
Uh-huh.
So he'd come in and he'd say, "Okay, get your picture page," and you would go and get these. They would get them for free, and he would color this page.
All right. So
Jell-O pudding.
before we sign off, I wanted to tell my favorite Joe memory. Right.
Oh.
And we got to go back in time to where I lived in a small house. I think I had maybe 1 or 2 kids. I ended up having 4. And we got the Post-Gazette. I'm like, this is really funny because we don't even get a physical paper anymore.
No,
right?
yeah,
Physical
you're right.
papers are gone. And we got the Post-Gazette.
Yeah, we used to.
And I remember that on Mondays, I would spend a lot of time. I purposely would go and just read the stats for the Steelers. Why would I do this? because you and I had cafeteria duty.
Oh, okay.
And
Yes.
it was always fun. And I wouldn't really know the stats, but you really liked the Steelers, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
just fun to banter with you. And I'd be like,
Oh,
well,
yeah,
you
that's where
know,
I got to know you. Yeah.
Jerome Bettis ran 123, and I always felt
yeah.
it was cool, like how good my reading retention was. But that was the only reason why I read the stats. I'm not like a stat guy. And I was thinking, and not only would I read the stats and show up and you and I would banter, but
Yeah,
in this
yeah.
one particular year, if you remember it, we're talking 15, 20 years ago,
Right.
they built the off-ramp to come to school.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and it seemed like every day we watched that off-ramp get higher.
Yes.
Like the earth movers got
Yeah.
higher and higher. And finally they stopped. And then they built a road
Yeah,
and they built an intersection.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that wasn't here when I started.
No.
And as I stood in the cafeteria duty this week and looked out there and had this memory, I looked past the hill and the intersection, and now they've built 9 townhomes on the
Yes.
other side, and now they've delivered the wood to bring the other 9.
Oh my gosh.
We've been here a long time, but once again, if it wasn't for you, I never would have read those stats.
Wow.
And then they say, Joe, there is the sound of the bell. It is time to shut down the smartboard, turn off the lights, and leave the greatest playground in all the world, your classroom.
You're right. The playground. You're right.
Every day.
It is.
Thanks for coming on the show. And honestly, man, congratulations on that retirement.
Thank you.
That is a heck of a feat.
It's just another day. You know what I deal with? It's if you remember, Forrest Gump.
I do.
And I'm taking it like Forrest Gump. Remember, Forrest Gump got a college scholarship to Alabama, and he was returning kickoffs because he was so fast. But he would just keep running. Remember, he would run all the way out the other side out the stadium because he would just keep running. And they had to put up a sign, "Stop, Forrest," and and that's what I'm doing. I'm just going full force. I'm trying to do better every day until the end, but I'm trying to keep looking out and I'm trying to do the best I can do because I don't want to leave thinking that I left not trying.
So glad you became a teacher, Joe.
Oh.
I mean that. The world needs good teachers. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will see you in the hallway.